Chicago, July heat. The tech company's biggest conference buzzed with laughter and polished suits. But when a young secretary bent to serve coffee, her boss smirked, hand sliding where it didn't belong. "You don't have the right to touch me," she whispered, her voice trembling but sharp enough to freeze the room. Silence fell, until a wrench clattered to the floor. One man stood. Not a CEO, not an investor, just an electrician in worn boots who refused to stay silent. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Let's begin. The July heat in Chicago pressed like a furnace against the glass walls of the convention hall. Inside, air conditioners hummed, barely cooling the sea of suits and cameras gathered for the tech company's annual summit. Investors murmured, journalists tapped notes, and executives polished their grins. Crouched behind a row of cables near the stage, Ethan Cole tightened a loose connection. At 33, he'd built a life with little more than calloused hands and stubborn grit. His 8-year-old daughter, Lily, was the reason he took every extra shift. Her smile kept him steady, even in a world that rarely noticed men like him. At the front sat Mr. Harlow, the company's polished CEO, lounging like he owned more than the building. His tone cut sharp when he barked, "Coffee. Now." Emma, the secretary, barely 24, hurried forward with a tray. Nervous, graceful, she set a cup at his elbow. The moment she leaned in, Harlow's hand pinched her backside. Laughter rippled among the executives, ugly and low. "Work hard enough, sweetheart, and maybe you'll find the real perks," he sneered. Emma froze. Her lips trembled, but she managed, You don't have the right to touch me." The room stilled. Then a wrench clattered onto the floor. Ethan stood up from the cables, jaw tight, fists balled. "Hey," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. She said stop. The spotlight, for the first time all day, shifted away from the suits, and onto the man in work boots. The conference hall buzzed with whispers. Ethan's voice had cut through the air like a crack of thunder. All eyes turned from the stage to the man in worn overalls, standing with a wrench at his boots. "Mr." Harlow rose slowly, his smile tight, venom curling beneath it. "Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" His words dripped with disdain. Ethan didn't flinch. "I know exactly who you are." "And I know," she said no. His gaze shifted briefly to Emma, whose cheeks were flushed with humiliation. Her fingers still trembled around the tray. A ripple spread through the executives. Some smirked nervously. Others shifted uncomfortably, unwilling to meet Ethan's eyes. Harlow stepped closer, his cologne sharp, his shadow stretching over Ethan. "You're an electrician. Nothing more. This company isn't your concern." "Respect is everyone's concern," Ethan shot back, steady and calm. The tension snapped like a taut wire. Harlow chuckled low, shaking his head. "Careful. Men who forget their place don't last long here." The tray slipped from Emma's hands, cups clattering across the floor. She whispered, "Please, stop, both of you." But it was too late. Ethan bent to pick up his wrench, his jaw set. Harlow straightened his jacket and returned to the table, but the damage was done. He had been challenged, in front of investors, staff, and cameras. The room slowly returned to motion, but the storm had only just begun. Ethan knew he had painted a target on his back. And Harlow, humiliated, would not forgive it. That night, as Ethan walked out into the humid Chicago dusk, he carried more than his tool bag. He carried the weight of a fight he hadn't asked for, but one he knew was far from over. By morning, the whispers had hardened into paper. A letter from HR waited on Ethan's locker, written warning, safety violations during conference event. He read it twice, the words blurring. Safety violations. He hadn't touched a wire wrong. It was a lie, Harlow's kind of lie, sharp and neat, tucked into official stationery. By noon, rumors were spreading. He lunged at the boss, someone whispered in the cafeteria. Almost started a fight in front of investors. Another added, they'll fire him. Just a matter of time. Ethan sat alone at a corner table, hands wrapped around a chipped mug. He thought of Lily, waiting at after-school care, clutching the stuffed bunny she never left behind. Losing this job wasn't an option. That's when Emma appeared, pale and tense, sliding into the chair across from him. Her eyes darted around like someone expecting to be watched. You shouldn't have done that, she whispered. You wanted me to just stand there? Ethan asked, keeping his voice low. You don't understand, she said, trembling. He's done this before. Other women. He ruins people who speak up. He'll ruin you too. Ethan leaned back, jaw tight. Maybe. But silence ruins people too. Emma's lip quivered. Gratitude flickered in her eyes, but fear buried it quickly. She rose, clutching her tray like a shield, and hurried off. That night, Ethan walked Lily home through the sticky heat. She chattered about her spelling test, swinging his calloused hand. But halfway up the block, he froze. A black sedan idled near his apartment building, headlights dim, engine purring low. It didn't move when he stared at it. Didn't drive away. Lily tugged at his hand. Daddy? Ethan forced a smile. Just a car, sweetheart. But inside, his chest tightened. That wasn't just a car. That was a message. The storm had already found his doorstep. 2 days passed. The black sedan reappeared each night, always parked a little closer to Ethan's apartment. No plates on the front. No driver in sight. Just waiting. Watching. On the third night, a knock rattled Ethan's door. He opened it to find Emma, her face pale beneath the streetlight glow. She stepped inside quickly, wringing her hands. I can't keep this to myself anymore, she whispered. Ethan set down his toolbox and studied her. What are you talking about? Harlow, she said, the name cracking in her throat. It's not just harassment. It's bigger. I was filing contracts last week, I found duplicates. Fake invoices. Millions funneled into shell companies tied to city projects. He's stealing, Ethan. Stealing on a scale that could bury this whole company. Ethan felt his gut tighten. Fraud? Government money? Why come to me? Because you're the only one who stood up to him, she said, her eyes trembling. And because, she hesitated. Your wife used to work here, didn't she? Ethan's chest constricted. His late wife, Marissa, had died years ago, but he remembered the nights she came home from this very company, quiet tears she wouldn't explain. She never told me, he murmured. But now, maybe she didn't have to. Emma clutched her bag to her chest. If I go public, I'm finished. He'll smear me, fire me, worse. But if we do nothing, he'll keep destroying lives. Ethan stared at the floor. He was just an electrician, a man scraping by with an 8-year-old to feed. But something deeper stirred, heavier than bills and warnings. Marissa's face. Lily's future. He looked up. Then we find proof. Something no one can bury. For the first time, Emma's shoulders eased slightly. But in her eyes lingered the same fear that haunted Ethan's apartment door each night, the knowledge that once they began, there would be no turning back. And outside, the black sedan's engine purred, waiting for the first mistake. The first threat wasn't subtle. Ethan came home from a late shift to find his apartment door spray-painted in red, "Keep quiet." Lily's wide eyes shimmered as she clutched her bunny. Daddy, did we do something bad? Ethan knelt, wiping the paint with his sleeve though it only smeared darker. No, sweetheart. Sometimes bad men just don't like it when good people tell the truth. The second threat cut deeper. A neighbor stopped him on the stairs, pale as chalk. There was a man asking about Lily at the schoolyard. Said he was a family friend. Teachers chased him off, but the neighbor trailed off, eyes full of pity. That night Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat in the dark, wrench in hand like a weapon, listening for footsteps outside the apartment. Every creak of the building felt like a warning. Emma called the next morning, her voice trembling. It's worse. He knows I saw the files. My desk was cleared out today. No explanation. No paperwork. Just gone. Ethan gritted his teeth. He's silencing you. And he'll do the same to you, she said. Unless we stop him first. The thought gnawed at him, an ordinary man up against a CEO who bought silence with money and fear. He wanted to walk away, to take Lily somewhere far. But each time he looked at her, he remembered Marissa's tears, the nights she whispered, "Someday this place will chew me up." He stood taller. Then we don't run. We fight smarter. But even as he spoke, he saw the black sedan again through his kitchen window. This time, the driver's silhouette was clear. A man smoking, eyes locked on Ethan's building. It wasn't just watching anymore. It was waiting for the right moment to strike. By August's end, the air in Chicago felt heavy, pressing down like a warning. Ethan met Emma in a diner off Wabash, the kind of place where the coffee burned your throat but no one asked questions. She slid a folder across the table. "Backups," she whispered. Inside were copies of invoices, contracts, and hidden memos she'd managed to photograph before her desk disappeared. Numbers in the millions. Fake projects. Harlow's signature scrawled bold across them all. Ethan flipped through the pages, his pulse thudding. This is enough to bury him. Emma shook her head. Not yet. These are pieces. He'll say I forged them. We need the whole puzzle. Ethan leaned closer, his voice low. The servers. She blinked. What? I wired the whole building last year. I know where the server room is, the maintenance codes, even the blind spots in security. If the files exist, they're there. Emma stared at him. That's insane. You'll lose your job. Your clearance. Ethan thought of Lily, her tiny hand in his when they crossed the street, the way she whispered, "Dad, you fix everything." He looked back at Emma. Some things are worth losing everything else for. The plan was simple, dangerous, and final. During the upcoming shareholder event, security would be focused on the conference floor. Ethan would slip into the server room under the pretense of a wiring check. Emma would stand ready, phone in hand, to broadcast whatever they uncovered. Emma's hand trembled on her coffee cup. If this goes wrong, he'll destroy us. Ethan gave a tired smile. Maybe. But if it goes right, we destroy him. They left the diner separately, blending into the crowd. Neither noticed the man in the corner booth, stirring his coffee slowly, eyes following their every move. The clock had started ticking. The annual shareholder summit drew the city's elite like moths to a flame. Suits filled the glass atrium, cameras flashed, and Mr. Harlow basked in the spotlight, his grin polished, his words sharp. Ethan blended in with the staff, tool bag slung over his shoulder. To most, he was invisible, another man in coveralls tightening wires, making sure the lights didn't flicker for the billionaires. But tonight, invisibility was his weapon. Emma moved gracefully through the hall, her clipboard clutched like armor. She looked calm, but Ethan could see the fear in her shoulders, the way her eyes darted toward the exits. She caught his gaze once and gave the smallest nod. At 7:15, the keynote began. All eyes fixed on Harlow at the stage. Ethan slipped through a maintenance door and into the service corridor. His badge beeped green at the server room, old clearance codes still working. Inside, the air hummed with the heat of machines. Rows of blinking servers stood like silent guards. Ethan pulled a USB from his boot, his hand steady despite the storm in his chest. He slid it into a port. Screens lit up with files, contracts, invoices, offshore transfers. Fraud written in digits and decimals. Meanwhile, back in the atrium, Emma stood by the stage's edge. She tapped her phone, ready to mirror the files to the massive display screens behind Harlow the moment Ethan signaled. Harlow's voice boomed, "This company stands on innovation, integrity, and..." The server door creaked open behind Ethan. He froze. A shadow filled the doorway, one of Harlow's men, bulkier than the frame could hold, eyes cold. "What do you think you're doing, electrician?" Ethan's jaw tightened. His thumb hovered over the enter key that would send everything to Emma. 1 second. One choice. The guard stepped fully into the server room, his shadow swallowing the glow of the screens. "Step away from the console," he growled. Ethan didn't move. His finger pressed enter. The progress bar flashed green, sending the files to Emma's phone. At that same moment, the guard lunged. They collided hard against the rack of servers, metal groaning under the weight. Ethan ducked the first swing, his wrench clattering to the floor. The second blow landed in his ribs, knocking the air from his lungs. But the transfer was already done. Out in the atrium, Harlow's voice carried like a sermon. "We are the future of Chicago's growth." And then, the massive screen behind him flickered. Numbers, contracts, hidden invoices poured across the display like a waterfall of secrets. Emma stood frozen, her phone glowing in her palm as the feed mirrored perfectly. The crowd gasped. Whispers erupted, sharp and frantic. Fraud? Government funds? This can't be real. Harlow spun around, his face draining of color. "Shut it down," he barked, but it was too late. Names, signatures, offshore accounts, every crime he buried now towered above him, 10 feet tall for the whole city to see. Back in the server room, the guard swung again, but Ethan shoved him hard into the console. Sparks burst, alarms shrieked. Ethan staggered for the door, clutching his side, and ran. In the atrium, Harlow stormed toward Emma, fury twisting his features. "You did this," he hissed, grabbing her wrist. Emma's voice cracked but carried through the microphone. "No, you did this. And the whole world is watching now." Sirens wailed outside. Heavy footsteps thundered as federal agents poured in, badges raised, warrant in hand. The atrium exploded into chaos. Suits scattered. Cameras rolled. And for the first time, Mr. Harlow's smile was gone. The atrium erupted like a hive struck with a stick. Investors shouted, journalists surged forward, and camera flashes stung the air. At the center of it, Mr. Harlow stood frozen, his charm gone, sweat shining under the stage lights. Federal agents swarmed, their voices clipped and unshakable. "Victor Harlow, you're under arrest for fraud, racketeering, and obstruction of justice. Hands where we can see them." He sneered, trying to muster authority. "This is a mistake. I am this company." But the sight of his wrists being clamped with steel said otherwise. The laughter that had once followed his every crude remark was gone. Now there was only silence, heavy, condemning silence. Emma stood near the stage, her chest heaving. She'd braced herself for retaliation, for Harlow's fury, but not for the strange flood of relief that washed over her. For the first time since she'd taken this job, she wasn't afraid. At the edge of the chaos, Ethan appeared, his shirt damp with sweat, clutching his ribs but standing tall. Their eyes met across the crowd. Emma gave a faint, shaky nod, they had done it. "Daddy," a small voice pierced the noise. Lily broke from Mrs. Carter, the neighbor who had brought her to the event, and ran into Ethan's arms. He crouched, holding her tight, his breath shuddering. "It's okay, sweetheart," he whispered. "It's over." But as agents marched Harlow past the cameras, his eyes burned holes into Ethan. A hiss, Just loud enough, this isn't the end. Ethan's jaw tightened. Maybe not. But tonight, truth had won the first battle. Outside, the summer night glowed with red and blue lights, sirens painting the city in justice. For once, Ethan didn't feel like a man hiding in the shadows of overalls and wire. He felt like a father who had chosen right, no matter the cost. The atrium emptied slowly, leaving only echoes of footsteps and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. The big screen still flickered with Harlow's crimes until an agent shut them down for evidence. Ethan stepped outside with Lily's small hand in his, the night air thick with humidity but lighter than it had felt in weeks. Emma followed, her blouse wrinkled, her clipboard gone, but her chin lifted higher than ever. They stood on the courthouse steps as the FBI vans pulled away, red taillights vanishing into the city. For a moment, the three of them were just still. "Dad," Lily whispered, tugging at his sleeve. "Did you fix the wires?" Ethan crouched, brushing a lock of hair from her forehead. "Yeah, kiddo. I fixed them. But tonight we fixed something bigger." Emma's eyes glistened. She looked at Ethan, her voice soft but steady. "You didn't have to risk everything for me." He met her gaze. "It wasn't just for you. Men like him, they count on people staying silent. I couldn't show my daughter that silence was the answer." Lily smiled faintly, leaning against him. "You're my hero, Dad." Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. He wasn't a hero. Just a tired electrician who had refused to look away. But maybe that was enough. Emma took a shaky breath. "The board will want to bury this, but with the FBI involved, they can't. And maybe now we can build something better. A place where people matter." Ethan stood, the city skyline glowing hot orange in the summer dusk. "Then let's start there. No more fear. No more silence." The three of them walked down the steps together, not as boss and employee, not as a man and a woman bound by circumstance, but as survivors who had chosen honesty over fear. And in that sticky August night, beneath the hum of traffic and the city's restless pulse, Ethan Cole finally felt free. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.